Welcome to Spiritual But, a one-of-a-kind talk show creating a new global conversation about inclusive spirituality. Whether you're religious or not religious, this show seeks to inspire you to discover your own unique spiritual experience. And now, here is your host, award-winning author and actress, Scottlin.
Welcome back to I'm Spiritual But, a talk show about spirituality. Whether you're religious or not religious, we talk about inclusive spirituality. What is spirituality? How is that different for different people? How can we increase our international and global conversation in a way that accommodates people of different kinds and different beliefs? And how can we really transform our own spiritual experience to be better? If you're religious, how can you take it up a notch and accentuate the experience you already have? And if you're not religious, where do you start and what are the tools and techniques? What are things you can read and understand that would help and inspire you? We have amazing guests on this show, and we've had such a major variety of different kinds of guests and different kinds of topics. I'm really excited today about my guest. His name is Tiago Bedin, and he is currently in Europe. Now I have to ask him what country he's in right now. So let me tell you just a little bit about him. He is a very international person. He's Italian-Brazilian born. He's award-winning personal development mentor. He has 2 master's degrees in global studies and peace and development work, which is amazing. And I'm going to have to talk to him more about my Global Impact League someday too. He has an honorary title of Doctor Honoris Causa from the Latin American Virtual Institute of Theology. So we've got all the pieces here. And he has a bachelor's degree in law from PUCPR. His passion is research and sustainability, marketing, development, and psychology. And I will add a conversation around spirituality. When he and I first talked, we realized that a conversation around spirituality for many people is really a conversation about spiritual philosophy. So we're going to get a little more technical today for those of you who want to dig a little deeper. And our topic today is going to be, what is faith? So please welcome Tiago to the show.
Hi, thank you so much.
Hi, Tiago.
Hi.
So what country are you in today?
Sweden.
Sweden, that's right. And you've been there for a year or so, is that right?
Oh, a bit more than that. I think from around 3 to 4 years.
3 to 5 years. Amazing. So you have lived in a lot of different places and a lot of different environments. And I'm sure that makes your life very, very interesting. But I love that you have a degree in theology as well, and a graduate degree. I have an undergrad degree in theology. And we're just going to have some fun today talking about what is faith. But before we do that, I just want to remind everyone that this is a live show. So you can write in on the platform you're watching, especially if you're on YouTube, Facebook, etc., and give us questions that we can answer live on the show. If you have questions or comments for me or Tiago, we would love to hear from you and read off your question, as many as we can. So please jump in, become part of this conversation. This is really about you, and that's why we're here, and that's why we're doing this. So, Tiago, I want to start first with a quote you chose. As you all know, we tend to kind of bookend the show with a quote that has been an impact on the guest. Today, our quote is from Keanu Reeves, which I think is really fun because we've had some great masters, but I don't know that we've had any modern celebrities. So this is great. And this is what he said. Every struggle in your life has shaped you into the person you are today. Be thankful for the hard times. They can only make you stronger. I really love that. So clear and so concise. And how has a quote like this really helped and influenced your life, Tiago?
I believe that sometimes with the struggles and the experience that you get, especially when you travel and you met people from different cultures, different backgrounds, they really make you remember that the simplicity of life, the good things of life, they are the things that really matter. I mean, the experience also is valid, but sometimes
Mhm.
even myself, I face a lot of challenge, and sometimes it's just you try to go back to yourself, try to remember the simple things, your family, your friends, and the simple things, for example, eating something healthy or nice or sleeping well, and those things, they really make you remember that you just had like experience, and that you can always grow, and you also learn something from that, because sometimes some
Yeah.
bad experience, they don't really, how can I put this way, they don't really get successful, because of course sometimes you fail, sometimes we win, but then there is this perspective of you are like, okay, I have this lesson. I mean, a lot of
Yeah.
people doesn't, so that's just a win in itself, because you
That's
learn to do
great.
something different, you adapt yourself.
So I always tell people too, I say nothing is ever wasted. Nothing is
That's
ever
true.
wasted. So no matter what your challenges were, what the trials, things that you would never wish on yourself or others, but things that have just happened in your life, it's only
Yes.
wasted if you let it be wasted, which really is about just feeling sorry for yourself. It's not
Yeah.
wasted if
Yes.
you put it into the encompassing wisdom and experience of what is you. I mean, we're all unique.
Yeah.
We all have unique gifts and talents, and we can share that with the world. The wisdom we've learned along the way. It doesn't have to be specific to our challenges and trials, but it can make us a bigger, better, wiser person, and I think more sensitive to others as well. So I really appreciate you talking about that. So let's just talk for a moment before we jump
Yeah.
into what is faith. Let's just talk for a second about what is spiritual philosophy to you, and how is that the same or different from spirituality?
I think it's a spiritual philosophy and spirituality, they intertwine some way, because I believe that the importance of having some sort of belief system, either if you believe in something that's, for example, from specific religions that we have today, or if you have belief, for example, you are a deist, as they call, right? It's somebody that believe in God, but their own way. I think that's very important, that you have this sort of belief, and I think that's the spirituality. And sometimes it's not even about like religion or spirituality per se, but the fact that you probably have a, for example, the same aspect that we were speaking, you have a bad day, and then you have this sort of mentality that you're like, you know what, I can have a better day tomorrow. I can try to improve my life for today. Even the things, for example, with the personal development, right? This is also some way a faith, and I also think in the spirituality. Of course, not strong as when you have this belief on a like higher being or something beyond our reality. But I think that's very very valid that we have this sort of faith, and then I think that spiritual philosophy can be everything that's connected with like religion, for example, religious books, theology, and even personal development psychology as well, right? Because they focus on the human, but they also bring a lot of perspective that kind of can improve your life.
I
So
love that
yeah.
you said that about, about even personal development,
Mhm.
because it really is part of what addresses our whole being, our
Mhm.
soul, our mind, our spirit, whatever you want to call that. And a lot of it is scientific. It has a lot of scientific research that can show us how what our choices do and our thought patterns, how they influence our life, how they influence our personality, how we think
Mhm.
influences how we feel. So even studying that, even psychology, you do get to understand, how spirituality affects the human being. Now, I
Mhm.
personally think that spirituality is a primarily human function, although I do believe that nature has spirit. Uh, but as human beings, yeah, how do we interact with that? If someone has a very scientific mind and they say, I struggle to relate to like a higher being in the sky, that's just not working for me. But I do see that in science and in personal development, it talks a lot about mindset and calm mind and quiet spirit, and how do you position yourself to be in the best space to receive and perform. So that actually can be a spiritual practice,
Mhm.
whether someone wants to call it that or not.
Yeah, I think the most important thing when it comes, especially with spirituality, you need to have this notion of abstraction for
Mm,
something that goes to another level. Let me put this way. I mean, from the things that I saw and the things also that I experienced, I think that you really needed to connect to something higher, because when it comes to science, science is also important. Of course, I'm not saying that it's something that you cannot put the God perspective, but the thing that sometimes we try to put things from this world, let me put this way. For example, some people, some, I don't know, famous person, we try to put them in the figure of the spirituality, and that's could be dangerous because we are in the same level. When it comes to
mm,
spirituality, I mean, saying a very broad way, of course, because it's very broad what I'm going to say now. You need to have this notion of something higher. And again, as I mentioned, I mean, there's people, of course, that they are not so religious, but you need to have a belief in something that's kind of incomprehensible for us as human, and then you put your thought on that higher being, and that becomes kind of like something for you to pursue yourself, right? So it's very abstracted, and that's why I also see, as you mentioned, a lot of people, especially from the science, they going back to this perspective of like what actually is God, what actually is religion, what actually is faith,
mhm.
because there is definitely this notion of abstraction of something that we cannot describe it, but we put ourselves to that, and we became
Yeah.
even more humble, for our
And
existence.
even, yes. And even, so if, if a being greater than ourselves, if some people struggle with that, for some of you, that would be no problem at all. For some people, it would be a
Yeah,
struggle. Um, it can be faith in something else you might call energy outside
yeah,
yourself or source, or what is it that we didn't create ourselves. Of course, we're
mm,
biologically created, but also what sets that process in motion. What is it that um, is makes our heart beat and makes us breathe,
mhm,
because we're not consciously doing that. Those are the
yeah,
subconscious functions of the body, but someone has something somewhere has programmed these subconscious functions to keep us alive. Our most core instincts, like fight or flight, we have these elements that are programmed into us, and we share that with many other animals and species as far as breathing and being and having a body. So, some kind of energy. So, let me ask you a specific question about faith.
yeah, of course.
How do you define faith if it's not in a particular spiritual being? How would you help explain that to someone who you're like, faith can really strengthen you? I realize you don't
Yeah,
believe in a God being, but here's how faith is still important.
uh, I think the question that goes with that. I mean, of course, we're talking about the higher being, but I think it's how things are organized. It's exactly
Mm,
what you mentioned. We breathe, we we do things, and the plant also react to things that are very well organized.
mm-hmm,
That's also a way to see that there is some sort of order.
mm-hmm,
So it should have something that makes things work
mm-hmm,
in some way. So I think that's one of the points that I see, and whenever like I am speaking with other people, especially with people that still have like agnostics, that they still trying to, they have the challenge to see
mm-hmm,
some sort of spirituality, or maybe God, as you can put this way, or even like atheists, or even deists, right? Because deist is somebody
mm-hmm.
that just believes on a God in their way. I think that's the main key. Like, do you see some sort of balance in our reality, in the nature as well?
Mm-hmm.
That can be also expressed in this feeling of like a higher self, a higher spirituality, and I mean, you don't need actually to just come and say, okay, go, etc. Because I know that there's still a lot of people that have challenges, but just look, just go outside, go to your garden, look like how the nature organizes itself, and you're definitely gonna see that there is a balance. There is something that really put things
Mm-hmm.
together, and
Mm-hmm.
that's important. I think that's also connected with personal development, etc. Right? That we see how things are well balanced sometimes, and sometimes we hear so much noise and chaos and division in the world, etc. but just go step outside, do small things, see the nature, and you're definitely gonna feel this spirituality somewhere.
I love that so much. And I've said this before, nature is, yes, I always say for myself personally, and I've had a lot of different spiritual and religious journeys, if you want to call them that. But nature is my cathedral, I always say, because when I go into nature, there is a sacredness, a sense of calm. Now, nature can also be violent. Nature is interesting because it shows us that life is not always ideal, but that life is strong, and the
Mm,
artistic element of nature is strong, and the functions
yeah,
of nature are strong and beautiful. And, that's such a strong place to really feel connected, because I always say it's not like we are looking out at nature. We forget we're actually nature. We're
yeah,
part of nature. We think that we're looking
100%.
out at nature, but we're actually part of nature. So the reason why for many people nature is such a comforting space is because it's actually our home, right? That's our natural
Yeah,
environment. All of this is artificial environment, and it's for very good purposes, but it's not our original environment. So when you talk about things like faith in nature and some kind of higher intelligence, you think of all the native cultures, whether those are Aborigines or Africa or Native Americans, right? They all had very, very close ties to nature. So just from their observable surroundings, they were able to come up with concepts that gave them an idea of spirituality or religion or faith.
yeah. May I add something to what you said, which I think is very nice? You told about the how even like the when nature is not organized, you still see some sort of organization
Hmm.
because things they are meant to do something. For example, there was, I don't know, a challenge. For example, especially when it comes to fires on the woods,
Mm,
you do see that sometimes in some places there is the nature itself. Of course, there are situations, but the nature itself kind of reestablish that place
hmm.
in order
Hmm.
to manage the fire.
Hmm.
So even in the disorganization, it organizes itself in a way that
Hmm.
it's very it's beyond our comprehension sometimes. You know.
Hmm. Yes. Yes. And that actually gives me great courage as well, or you might call it faith,
Hmm.
um, in the resiliency of the human spirit, right?
Yes.
And even
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
human body. We don't know yet how to heal everything, but the body is an incredible thing that often heals itself of many things. If you get a cut,
Mhm.
most of us heal quickly. Your body has that resilience, and I think we have that emotional resilience too, because while I feel that most animals are sentient beings, some people might beg to differ, but they don't have, that we can tell, like a higher intelligence, a deductive reasoning. They don't have those faculties available to them. So they're just present. Just what
Yeah.
is. And if they're in danger, they're in danger. And if they die, they die. If they're born, they're born. They're just there in that moment, in that day. And gives us a lot of wisdom that if we can trust the process as ourselves, an element, a created being of nature, if we can trust the process of regeneration, of resilience, you could call that faith. If we have faith in the process of whatever it is that put us here in this cycle that we're in, we really don't need to be afraid unless it's a moment of physical danger and an animal runs away. Other than
Mhm.
that, we don't need to fear. We don't need to be in that fight or flight around paying the bills or what might happen or what if someone leaves me in a relationship, or we can just be present. But it takes
Yeah.
a kind of faith for us to be present. So how do we practice that kind of faith?
I believe the importance of this is to definitely to balance your life and also one thing that you touched that I think is very important to say. And then I see also nowadays we definitely need to empower more the love as humans because
Mm,
when you go nowadays and you check things online, there is always this division, polarization everywhere. And one thing that I was also checking from spirituality, also personal development itself, but also some psychologists, famous psychologists and things like that, is that we also struggle sometimes with the simple thing of is not about like just loving people, but also respect people's being. I mean, sometimes we don't really look to ourselves as beings that can do a lot of good. We tend to look, especially there is a lot of discussion nowadays about like, oh, we humans, we are the problem, etc. I do think that we also need to recognize some things to balance, but we also need to look to ourselves as the opportunity to change, because since we have this rationality, since we have this idea of having different perspectives, especially with the abstraction and the spirituality, the faith things that are, I mean, you can animal definitely would have a challenge, except some different case, right? They have a lot of study with like chimpanzees and other animals that they do have some sort of abstraction, but it's not the same as us. But there is this really strong notion that we really needed to come along and try to balance ourselves and see that we have potentially and kind of embrace each other on its own different perspectives to build a better place for each other. And I think that we need to give more value to us as human, not just like, okay, we are the problem. I mean, of course, we also need to take responsibility for things, but we also need to see the value of human as somebody that can change the society. And I think that there is a lot of challenge when it comes to that in these days. And I mean, I have friends and I know people, and I think everybody does, that have totally different opinion than you, and I still get along well with them. Some I can also not connect, and I mean, that's just how it is with being human. But when I see those friends that have a totally different perspective of life, and I can still be friends, or I can still connect, or even like relatives, especially, I mean, we are talking here like you are from US and from Brazil. It's also very polarized. Here in Europe, it can be a bit different, but still, it's something that's became very trendy. I think that's the way that comes when we need this aspect of like spirituality to balance, to give more credit to people. Again, not fully, but we need to still get this notion, because especially with personal development, that's what personal development and also psychology more recently they are trying to do. They are trying to say, look, you have the power to change your reality.
Well, and this is so important because learning to embrace our differences is partly learning to embrace our similarities. And I just want to reach out to Gafa. Thank you, Gafa, for watching live from Ghana. I hope you're having an amazing day. And thank you for your comments. She was agreeing with what you were saying, Tiago. So true. So yes, when there's people we don't agree with, it takes a lot of maturity to be able to listen. I would just say it takes a lot of maturity to be able to listen to other people's perspectives, other people's experience, without judging or trying to change them. And that maybe is really obvious. But when we disagree with people, we can disagree without trying to change their perspective. Maybe their perspective seems incorrect to us, but maybe it resonates very truly for them in this moment where they are now. And how do we know? We don't know if we know I don't have all the answers. You don't have all the answers. Our experiences are different. Yes. So learning to see the commonalities of each other, I think, is such a big part of expressing spirituality and faith, understanding your fellow human beings, reaching out, being willing to accept the differences based on, we have a difference of opinion or a difference of religion, but that doesn't mean that we can't share a smile. We can't have a meal together. We can't work together to create a better world, which I think is what you said, which is, yes, in many ways, humans are the problem, but in some ways we can also be the solution.
Yeah, I think we need to emphasize that. And one thing also that you mentioned, and I can say from my previous experience, because as you mentioned, I was working with nonprofit. Now I'm more focused with personal development, and I respect the time that I was working with nonprofit, but now I'm focusing more on this personal development and psychology perspective. And I think that's what impressed me a lot is definitely a simple word called dialogue, right? I mean, you don't need to agree with everybody, but you just try to match because there is a lot of people that they just want to express themselves and they are well balanced and we can hear them even if we disagree. Of course, there's extremes on any type of thing that you can imagine, but I mean, when it comes to these people, you're gonna definitely know. But when you have some sort of dialogue and it's somebody that you are willing to listen, why just give a chance to hear? I mean, especially for me, I met so many people that changed my perception over a lot of things. Things that I wouldn't know if I would never leave my country, I need to say. And I mean, things that I don't even learn on the university. I mean, a lot of people like, oh, you have a lot of degrees. But I say, look, I think I learned way more with the people that I was working with, the non-profit, even like local people that, if you look in a academic perspective, they don't have like, oh, that much degree and status, etc. And sometimes I learn way more with them than people with my own
Right?
university background.
No,
So
it's so
you need to
true.
have
No,
this. You
it's
need to
so
have this.
true. And that's the balance.
Yes,
So
exactly.
I think higher education is a wonderful thing.
Yes,
However, we can learn as much from someone who doesn't have any formal education
exactly.
because our commonality is not our education. Our commonality is our humanness. Our
Yes.
commonality is that we have a heart, mind, soul, spirit, whatever you want to call that. We all have that and we're connected. And this is where I believe energy or whatever you want to call it, divine, connects us so much more than we know. Science will eventually show how much we are connected,
Yes.
even when we're not in the same room, in the same building, in the same country. So
Yeah.
I have a comment here from someone named Fortune. And this isn't a call-in show, Fortune, so we won't be able to talk to you on the phone. But please type in your question or comment that's specific to this conversation, and we will do our best to respond. So yes, I think finding those commonalities is a beautiful thing. And I think that can help us restore each other's faith in,
Yes.
okay, so what is faith? If nothing else, restore our faith in each other.
Yeah.
Now, you can be on opposite sides of a war and still have faith in each other as a human being, because most people want the same things. They want to survive, be healthy, have food on the table, take care of their children, maybe provide education for their children, retire in a comfortable space where there's not a lot of physical suffering, and have a peaceful, joyful life. So our political and religious differences, while they're a real thing, they don't have to define all of our relationships. I think that is so, so important. The relationship should be first. And then the fact that we have things that differentiate us, we have more in common than we have separately as any human being in the world. So restoring faith in each other as human beings can be such a huge advance forward. And I know there's a lot of hate in the world. That's a very strong word, but it's very true. There's a lot of hate and disagreement. There's a lot of people on both sides of every disagreement that feels they have been wronged. But it's so interesting if you go in with an open mind to an environment where people strongly disagree with something you believe in, religion, politics, but you just have a drink or a meal or a short conversation at the bus stop, that doesn't matter. You're just
Yeah.
connecting as human beings. So restoring our faith in each other, because I think, excuse me, one of the most challenging things that media and the internet has created in this world is a deep, deep distrust of each other.
Yes.
So even though
Very so.
we are saying we need to distinguish, you're different from me, which is a very valid question that, this person's different this way, this person's different that way. Well, we're all different from each other, first of all. No one is ever going to be an exact rubber stamp of the next person.
Mhm.
But, can we restore faith in humankind, because if we can have those simple conversations, we have an opportunity of really creating an impact in the world, and opening spirituality up to a much wider conversation, which is really about all that is good and wonderful about being human.
That's very very well said, and I think that's the situation where we need really to look and I mean meet people and try to check the simplicity, because this is also simplicity, as I mentioned to you. I mean, I can say, and I already told a lot of friends, I met so many amazing people from very very complex and complex realities, that they have such a simple life. And I can see even for myself that I was just looking and I was like, why my life is so complex and this person's life is so simple? But they just live every day in the present, because they have a strong spirituality within themselves. They have a strong bond with the family, and they are fine with that. They manage in a way to not have this chaos that also you mentioned, especially nowadays with unfortunately a lot of things that we see in the either mainstream media or also alternative media. I mean, it just there is this kind of like war of disagreements, etc. And when I see that, I just feel like, wow. When I see a lot of people that, and of course, not everybody, but when it comes to especially the academic field, I see a lot of people that they really want to have like some sort of degree, etc., and they fight so much. And when you see they have this chaos that I also was included, and then when I see these people, especially working with them community that I met online, they are just so simple, so humble, and they have so much more like lived experience,
Mm-hmm.
that I just look and they were like, wow. And then they're like, wow, I'm learning with you. I was like, no, I'm learning with you. I'm learning
Right?
with you. So that's just so amazing. And I mean, I still have connection with some people that I met that time, and I just look to them. They look to me. They're like, oh, but you're a Brazilian guy in Sweden. So I was like, no, but the things that you told me, I learned way more that they would learn in other things that I
Mm-hmm.
had. I mean, even if I never been to their country, etc. And that's just so magic. That's just so
Yeah.
empowering. That's just I thank them so much for this. And I think that
Yes.
we need also to look and be also humble with that, and not just be like, oh, I have this, etc., and I learned this. We also need to look this really human simplicity
Mm-hmm.
perspective, the simplicity of this, just living day by day, managing your life, praying for the spirituality that you have, loving your family, loving your somebody that you have, and just be somebody important for your community. I mean, sometimes
Mm-hmm.
you don't need to go globally. There's also
Mm-mm.
this thing sometimes, and nowadays people say that like, oh, you need to go globally. That's also very nice, and I can say also for me was a good experience. But sometimes people, they stay in the community and they do amazing impact. And I mean, what,
Amazing.
I'm gonna judge them? No, of course not.
Mm-mm.
Of course
No.
not.
And
They
sometimes
deserve it
even the
the rest.
most important. I mean,
Exactly.
changing the conversation at the community level around the world by people who are connected globally, whether that's online or, virtually, um, that creates a conversation around the world. So
Yeah.
I think, and as you say, being willing to learn from anyone, I make it a challenge. What is something I can learn from the person right in front of me? What can I learn? It could be the simplest thing, but what is it and what can I learn? Because, human nature in many ways makes us all think that we're right or better or more correct
Yeah.
about life than the other person. And those who do have advanced education, it comes a little easier to think that they have the
Yeah.
answers because they feel like they've done the research and they've analyzed it. But sometimes it's the simplest things, the everyday things. If you can't have a conversation with the everyday human, how are you really benefiting? Now, I've realized there's a higher level of, global transformation and humanitarianism and environmentalism, right? But if you can't have a part of that conversation with just anyone and learn something from them,
Yes.
you've really missed your test group. I mean, the test group is the world, and you might learn something that you never imagined that could literally transform what you're working on. but you have to really listen. And the challenges for most of us, and I think in faith in general, no matter how we define that, is the biggest challenge is that our ego can get in the way.
Yeah.
Ego versus faith. Ego meaning I have the answers, I know what I'm doing, and I have a better opinion on this than anyone else. And faith being I am part of a greater family, a greater whole, a global community. I am an individual, and that's just fine that I have my own belief system. But in faith, I know that I can still be with anyone, and we don't have to have friction. We can actually find our common ground and restore faith in each other in humanity. So I think everything you said about that is amazing. We only have a couple minutes left. So I just wanted to ask you, what would you tell someone who says, I'm working to have stronger faith? My biggest challenge is faith in what? I'm not really connected to a supreme being in this particular journey where I am. But how do I start practicing faith? What does that look like? If it's in what? Believing in the good elements, the redemptive qualities of humanity, and believing in energy and believing in nature. How do I apply this in my life? So can you give us any of your personal suggestions around that?
I can say even for myself, when I had a lot of challenges that made me even come back to my religion, that we forget a lot, I think, especially everywhere they see. Go back to the classics, or go back to something that you really have some sort of vocation. I think that when it comes, especially with religion, you definitely can go read some religious books, but also you can look, for example, especially to me, I always had some sort of connection with psychology and also some philosophers. So, for example, I would recommend definitely for reading a lot of books on this subject, but look for the classics, because we are really forgetting nowadays to read the classics. And I'm very surprised nowadays, because sometimes we get a lot of things and we forget the simplicity, the basics. I'm not saying that all these people, like psychologists and philosophers, they have all the explanation of the word, but sometimes when you read Plato, Socrates, Aristotle, you have also, for example, from the theological perspective, you have St. Thomas Aquinas, but this is more like into the field of Catholicism. You have so many what Freud as well. I mean, you don't need to really agree with them, but sometimes we forget to read the classics. Dostoevsky as well. There's another one that I really recommend people to read. And I mean, you really needed to see, because if you already have this compelling to learn more, I think that you need to go to the classics, because sometimes even when I see in personal development, there is a lot of things that they take from these people. Of course, they do in a very more manageable perspective, because they give the tools, but everything goes from the essence, and we forget the essence. We forget to read the classics, because sometimes I don't know, I think that we are so overwhelmed by a lot of things nowadays that we just don't read as we used to read. And for me,
it's so
I mean,
true,
right?
and also so interesting, because I do love the classics. In fact, I was just reading some Socrates this morning, kind of during my meditation time. I was like, am I the only person who's doing this?
No, I am here.
and my audience knows I have 2 degrees in history. So the past really informs us so much. We have this tremendous burden that we carry around. A lot of it comes from media and the news, that everything is wrong and everything has to be fixed and we have no solutions. But to name a very wise man of 2 major world religions, Solomon, he says there's nothing new under the sun. Well, maybe there isn't technology, but as human beings, there's really nothing new. So if you want to create some relief, if you want to create some space to believe in something, even if it's that commonality with other human beings, yes, read the classics, find those elements where you're like, wow, that's exactly what I think about this. This and that, not so much, but connecting ourselves to that bigger picture, to past, present, future, People talk about past lives, future lives. Other people say, oh no, they're parallel lives, which I think would be really fascinating if that was true, right? But yes, we're so connected. So the idea that you're an island, no man is an island, no woman is an island. The idea that you're alone in your journey is the thing that can damage anyone the most, feeling that you're unconnected. That's why we want to connect you in this space, with this show, with each of us, with the greater community, with classics. Tune into something and realize that you have a commonality and a sense of peace. I think a lot of what faith could be defined as is a sense of belonging and a sense of peace. Whether that's to a religion, a sense of belonging and a sense of personal peace, or to a philosophy, a belonging and peace, or connected to your human beings in general with gratitude. And that's, that is a peaceful place, a peaceful space. So find what that is for you. I challenge all of our listeners today. Thank you, Tiago. This has been absolutely a wonderful conversation. I could talk to you for hours and hours and hours, as you know, we have before. So this has been absolutely wonderful. I'm so glad to have you here. If any of you just joined in the last few minutes, you'll know that Tiago is Italian-Brazilian. He's an award-winning personal development mentor, also has many degrees, including in law and theology. And as you know, he just talked about his love for the classics. So check him out. You can find his contact information, social media in the notes. Thank you, Tiago, for being here. And yes, and thank you everyone for joining. Please join us again next week. It's always, our show is live at noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific here on USA Global. I'm Ann Scottlin. You're watching I'm Spiritual But, and go to our website, imspiritualbut.com. Shoot us an email or question. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you all. Have an amazing week ahead, and find something you can put your faith in. Bye-bye.
Bye.